Hello, my friends. I'm Rick, and little Missy's sitting up here somewhere. Oh, right there right there. That's the little kitty that's been down here in the cat box for a while. While we're doing videos for the last few weeks, I felt comfortable enough to let her out because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get her to be like, to be nice with people and to play nice. The hard part is getting her to play nice with the other kitties in the house. We're gradually introducing them. She spends more time out there. We try to get her out there every day. Sometimes more than others, depending on how busy we are and how often the wife yells at her because she's trying to keep her from getting into fights. Sometimes they got to get to know each other, and that involves some hissing and smacking at each other. There's a difference between that and a brawl, but can't connect sometimes. So I've been watching off and on for the last 6 months on the internet, YouTube specifically, a whole lot of references to men. Are men okay? Are we okay? We're having a problem in society on a number of levels with us, with men. And are we okay? Sometimes, right? Let's just talk about this for a second, because this is something that I don't know. You younger fellows might understand and may not. I know that one thing it's traditional human nature is that the youth think the old are stupid. The youth know everything. The old realize that what they don't know is everything. Truth. The older I get, the less I'm confident about knowing anything, because the more I know stuff, the more I realize how little I actually know about stuff, and that's something to take into account. And so when we ask ourselves as children, go back to the 70s when I was a kid, and men in America are indoctrinated in many ways. We are brainwashed in many ways. There's agendas, and there's agendas, and there have been agendas since the existence of humanity and society. There will always be agendas, because that's just a matter how the world works. And one of them is that if you go back from the 1950s mantra, the husband worked, the mother stayed home. Well, that's changed radically. Today's society, we can't afford most people cannot afford a single income home. That's just the facts. They just can't, and you really suffer when you in a position, and especially if you're not on the higher end of the education spectrum where you have much better paying jobs. We don't all get the luxury or the luck or the circumstances that allow us to get into a life-changing setup. So if you're kind of handcuffed in some ways. So when I was young, it was beaten into our heads, literally in some cases, work is everything. Work is everything. A man works until he dies. That's the truth. That's part of the problem. I mean, they've been going on about this sort of crap for a while now, and that makes me wonder. I had a video on it, and I wonder if I picked it or not, or an image. Did I pick it or not? Oh, I'm guessing I didn't. Oh yeah, I did. Here we go. I want this fella here, right? I want to show this fella here for a minute. This is an old black and white photo. This is an older photo. Now, this might be anybody's grandpa puttering around out in the shop or in the garage. This could be an old farmer puttering around out in the shop in the garage. But reality is, before 1930s, 1935, 1936, I'm not exactly sure what year that FDR initiated a lot of the social programs that the Republicans say they hate. They hate it. And yet, most of the Republican base, as I say over and over again, are dependent on these same social programs as the rest of the damn country. Hello? We're back to that. How do you make a living? There was a good reason why people didn't live past their 50s or 60s. Men specifically rarely lived past their 50s 100 years plus ago. Wasn't all that long ago. One of the reasons for that is this. We're conditioned from the very beginning as young men that we are providers, we are soldiers or warriors or whatever. We are supposed to work our butts off. That's what makes us who we are. That's what's a big portion of what makes men men in the men's eyes and in the world that men have created. In a lot of ways, no offense, the ladies have created this too. Women, you have as much responsibility and blame as the problems with men as men have with women, because we're all interacting together. That's the reality of the real world. You don't have to like it. You don't have to be a psychiatrist to understand it. Common sense things. That's something that's terribly lacking in America today, is common sense and fucking empathy. Empathy. So you go back 75 years ago, before Social Security and Medicare, what did you have? You literally had 80-year-old grandpas working in the factories until they died. You know, all this, oh, you pull up by your bootstraps in this society state, where social state where everybody gets money. Well, that's funny, because we don't all get money. And and those of us that entitled to it should get it. I pay my damn taxes. I pay my state taxes. I pay my sales taxes. I pay tax on my fuel. I pay my taxes. I'm entitled to the crap they say I'm entitled to. And I don't give a F what your and them or my damn religious or political views are on any of this stuff. That's what makes America what it is today. So, one of the reasons was when the stock market collapsed in the late 20s, early 30s, and we had the Great Depression, huge numbers of really old, vulnerable people were in bad shape. Many died. They don't talk about that in history books, but you have to wonder how many old folks died when the jobs dried up. It's hard enough to get a job when you're a young, viable person, but when you get older, it's much harder. And if you've been in the work career long enough, you know this. You know this. That said, what if you had to work until you die? Literally die. Okay, because that's what we were conditioned to do. So we spent most of our lifetime somehow being driven forward towards this motion. And this coincides with a lot of religious context that ties into this about the nuclear family, which is also the negative side for the women, because the women were supposed to be in their place. Ladies, you have your place. That's what they are trying to tell you. I don't agree with that. I agree that we all have a place, and that we're all social and economic engines in this environment that we call the world and humanity. And why should we not all be treated with some human dignity and some human kindness and empathy? Empathy. Am I say give everybody $5,000 a month and don't expect them to work? That wouldn't fly either. Just be honest. That would not fly. The society and economy would not function well if that happened. We do need a percentage of the people in the country freaking working, and it's a good thing. Work is a healthy, good thing for you. But to what end? What end? Right? So when I talk about this sort of stuff, I mean, Jesus, people literally died in their, from working to death. And the big corporations and the wealthy people, they didn't care. And this feeds into the next line of problems for men. Sometime about the mid to late 80s, definitely kicked off in the 90s in force, was this advent of social media and this distancing of the physical presence. The downside to having all of this, YouTube, the internet, cell phones, video calls, all this stuff, is that we have actually expedited the isolation of everybody. We are far more isolated as a people today than we were 20 years ago. And part of our psyche and part of what makes us who we are struggling to cope with this, right? So we deal with this in different ways. It's just like when we're kids, as men, young men, we're taught, to don't take crap from other people. Stand up for yourself. Stand up against bullies. Treat women well. That was how I was raised. But I was also among a whole lot of people who did not treat women well. And in part because a different portion of society was conditioning those young men to believe women still had a place in in the world, and a place was at home and not out here in the with the rest of us pulling their own weight. So that psyche feeds into the 50, 60 something crowd that we have today, and it's playing its role in a lot of our problems today too. The growing loneliness issue amongst the society in general, but young men is becoming problematic. And one of those other problems that goes with this, as young men in the 70s, we were reinforced often and from many different sources how we should not express our feelings or be very tight-lipped about our feelings. A good man is a stoic. If you don't know what a stoic is, Google it, because it's worth your time to find that out. But because you'll know a lot of stoic people in your life. One of the most well-publicized stoic individuals right now that come to my mind is the defense minister, what's his face, who didn't want to tell anybody that he was going to have a pretty nasty surgery and he needed to recover from it, and because he's a very private person. Well, a stoic person does not talk about their health issues and other things aside from their doctor. It's kind of a philosophy in many ways, but this is something that was ingrained in a lot of us as youth in bits and pieces. Keep that in mind too, that there's no one solid manual, no training manual for young men in America. Nobody can sit down as a kid, hand you the education book and tell you everything you need to know to be the best you can be is right here. Because we have lots of those help books, but they're not really helpful. Not to the way that we teach and we show through example the youth that follow us, just like our elders did for us, whether they did it willingly or not, good and bad. Because how many of our bad habits did we pick up by watching our family and parents and elders do the things they did? And if they were doing bad things or living poorly or whatever, right? Anyway, so we get into this point in a more modern era where we're struggling. Us older men are struggling to become more modern men, and the young men that are modern men by today's standards are confused as all get out. How are we supposed to feel? Society says this, and society says this. Everything's contradiction. Back to the full circle. And it's only been 20 odd years since the internet took off to the scale that it is now, and yet all the answers are out there. The problem is there's for every one answer, there's 50 that won't fit your need. And they're not all answers for every person. And the one person that says, I got the answer for everything, is full of it. They're full of it, or they're selling you something, or trying to anyway. Just being honest here. So we're not supposed to share emotions very often. And one of the ways that we were able to do this as children, as young men, in my growing up era, was through our friends and our family. I had one cousin that was like a brother to me, and I literally a best friend and a brother, and I spent a lot of time with him until things started. We started to diverge in two different paths, and then things separated. And it's just like my childhood friends, the friends I grew up with. I consider them my best friends today, even though I have not talked to either one of them in probably 35 years. I don't even know for sure where the hell they live. And they have made no effort to contact me or talk to me or anything. And so it's a mutual thing. I mean, I'm just being honest. After 35 years, I don't feel like I want to intrude in their life because I don't think they really want me in it anymore. So if they don't want me in it, why do I want to be in it, kind of thing, So, I'd rather be friendless loser than have a bunch of friends who secretly hate me. This is a common thing today. And then we add this, like I said, this whole other generation in the 90s and the early 2000s came up, and what did they get? They were born and integrated into the social media madness and the video games for a lot of people. So we're getting a lot of when you go back to the 40s and 50s, the 50s and 60s into the 70s, the TV was the great mother. TV was the great educator. We learned a lot from watching TV shows, and not all of it was good stuff to learn, and not all of it was healthy. And we're marrying that with all the influences of our peers and our elders at the time who had different views. Right? Personally, My dad was my stepdad. I never met my real dad. Never knew him. Never had it. Ever wanted to. I was less than a year old when my mom married my father, as I know the one I know as my father. My stepdad was in the Marine Corps. Then he worked for Firestone for his entire lifetime. And he retired. And he worked and he worked and he worked. And he was always angry. He was always mad. He was always upset at something. Mom didn't hold a job until after my sister graduated high school, and then she went and got a part-time job because she got tired of asking for money from dad. And so she went and got a part-time job so she would have money to spend on stuff she wanted to spend on, which did help the household as a whole because it reduced the dad's need to spend money on wider things, but it not necessarily had crossed that boundary to where both of them were working for the benefit of the house. Whereas my friend David and his parents both worked even in the 70s. In the 60s and 70s, his mom worked a full-time job uptown there and would come home about the same time the kids got out of school. So they went to school. When we went to school, she went to work. She got off about the same time we got out of school. And that's how they played that out. And then his dad worked. So once again, all these fine older men died early. Most of them didn't live into their 70s. My dad lived into be 86 because he was more. I think death had to come to find him in his sleep because he was not something you were going to take him on his feet, not willingly anyway. And my grandfather, the other big male influence in my life, was both a very decent man and a fire and brimstone preacher, Pentecostal Christian. So I got bombarded by a whole lot of crap. This left me with the third major male figure in my life growing up, and that would have been my Uncle Bob, Big Bob. Since we had a little Bob and a Big Bob, that's kind of the way it played out. My Uncle Bob was a very nice person, a very intelligent individual, who tried many ways to improve his life and his family's life, but they weren't always successful. He always had the next great thing kind of guy. He tried to start a carpet cleaning business in the 70s. That didn't do well. Spent thousands of dollars on the equipment. It just rotted under the porch. He tried to run a ceramic business out of the old garage out back until the garage burnt down. So you see how that kind of progressed for him. Well, he had another really darker problem side of him. He was he liked to prey on young children, specifically young boys, and I'll leave it at that. So that kind of crap fucks with you over time, and this leads you to my entire lifetime was very fucked up and confused, in part because I didn't know what to do. Other part was I didn't know who to talk to. Who do you share this stuff with? Who do you explain things to? And then, of course, another thing that we're geared to from the early on when it comes to young men is that family nuclear thing. It's also sex. Let's be honest. Generally speaking, young men specifically, are hormonal driven, and I was no different. And once I realized sex was a good thing, I was confused as fuck by it, but I understood that this was a good thing, and I kind of liked this sort of thing. And so I started getting as many girlfriends as early as I could, and this didn't always pan out because I was a chubby, opinionated, introvert, passive aggressive. I didn't know any of that crap then, but I understand where I was, who I was then, and what made me up today. But it took a lifetime of journey and a whole lot of soul searching, and I still don't know. And the one damn thing guaranteed I do know, being at 57 years old this year, is that I don't know shit. I don't know shit. I'm guessing half the time. I'm doing the best I can with common sense decisions and trying to educate myself when I can. But there are times and stuff where I'm overwhelmed and there's nobody to turn to. This is why I complain and bitch on my videos so much. You're my only outlet. YouTube is my only outlet right now. That's the God's truth. And I won't go into, there's no point in dragging in all the damn personal details and stuff like this, but it is what it is. So we're geared early on as young men in America to want that nuclear family unit. We want that wife and 2.1 kids or whatever the hell it's supposed to be. And we're driven to do this. So when you find yourself, and a lot of young men today are struggling with this, and this leads to the suicide problem. And once again, I'm a brutally honest person. This is part of my problem. Sometimes I don't know when to not be honest, or I cannot not be honest. I can't deceive people intentionally on a normal, regular basis. I just don't have it in me to do it. There was a time in my life when I did, and I don't know. I've matured. I've wised up. I've grown tired. I just don't want to deal with it. It's hard to keep track of shit. It's hard to keep the lies going if that's how your whole life is devoted to that kind of crap. And there's a world full of people doing that right here, right now, every day. You know, just what the hell do you do? So you sit there, and these young men don't have anybody to turn to, but we're also driven and that we want a relationship. We want the nuclear family. We want somebody to love us and to love. Even though we as men generally don't really understand what the fuck that means. We think we do. There's the key. People in the world mostly believe they think they do, or they think they know. Not that they're 100% guaranteed this is the thing for me. This is why so many relationships don't last the time. They don't go the distance, in part because, once again, you know, they're not compatible, or they were set up for the wrong reasons. My ex-wife and I, great example, myself personally, at 16 years old, my cousin introduced me to this girl with the only purpose of a quick get together kind of thing. Somebody who was willing to put out. And I wasn't exactly an ugly kid. I was pudgy. I had a belly. I wasn't huge. I was 230 pounds when I was 18. So it wasn't like I was a big pot-bellied kid. But I spent my summers throwing bay hails and shoveling horse shit. So I'm telling you, physically speaking, I was in pretty damn good shape for my age and my lack of wanting to be a fucking football star, because that was another thing that was hammered into us as young men. You should be in sports. You need to be in sports. Sports are good for you. Are they? How many of you went through the sports programs when you were younger and never got anywhere with it? Never did anything else with it? At the end of the day, other than as being a social connected tool to other peers of your, and maybe learning to work together as a team, which is very all important stuff, at the end of the day, it means nothing. It meant everything then. It don't mean shit now. Now, my buddy David, he was in the football, and he was this, and he was that. Ain't none of that matters now. Except for the few memories he may or may not have of it. I don't know. Like I say, I ain't talked to him in 35 years. So, you wonder why everybody's so fucked up. Are men okay? Am I okay? I am existing. I'm doing. You know, when people tell you, I'm a terrible pessimist, and this is partly because of all the shit I've been through, and all the shit I put myself through. I'm being honest here. I put myself through a lot of the bullshit that I went through, in part because I didn't have any way to understand that there were other ways, and I could see other people living different and better lives, but in my head I could not understand how to get there. What made their life better than mine? How come they got opportunities I didn't get? What did I need to do, or what could I do? The problem was, A, I didn't really have anybody to give me goody, solid answers, and B, the people I did have, their answers were generic. Find God. Find your faith. Join the military. Join the military. Join the military. Join the military. That was like a mantra in my 14 through 18 years. I was nonstop hearing that from every side. Because, you know what? None of them said, you should go to college. Go to college. Go to college. None of them was going to help me get to college either. My mom and dad were not wealthy enough to put me to school. They did not have the resources to help me get student loans or any of this crap. I didn't have any of that crap. It wasn't until 2000, and the company I worked for had a strike, that I got a retraining grant that allowed, from the United Way, that allowed me to go to college to get a college diploma. And guess what? I proved I could go to college and get a goddamn diploma. But then what happens? I could never find a job to put it to use for. And so what I do now is so far away from that period of my life, that was a wasted time and effort, other than giving me a piece of paper saying I went to college. Right? Yeah. So, where do we end up with? Where do we stop? Where does it go? How do we deal with it? And where's the answers? And the society just keeps getting more wound up, more tighter and tighter today, and more selfish and self-centered. Hey, I'll give you a grand example of this. Traffic. You drive every day. As if you are a person like me and you drive, my job involves me driving a hell of a lot. So I'm out there 6, 8, 10 hours a day, depending on the day, driving. And a big portion of my day is driving. And so I see a shitload of traffic. And one of the common things that have become a thing are aggressive, unthinking people. It's all about what they need and what they want, and they want it yesterday. And so they will cut you off and not think nothing of it. They will make sudden turns without bothering to signal that they're going to turn. They will do things, and they'll be oblivious to everybody around them, including the problems that they may be causing. This morning, for example, it is Saturday morning, and I went and after breakfast, I took the wife over to her aunt and uncle's house to drop something off. And then on the way over, 3 different people pulled out in front of us without signaling or pulled into something. As we're coming this way, they decided to pull into a parking lot and just within 20 feet, 10 feet of the damn van. That's too close to cut in front of people. That's when you say, what happened to a little bit of patience? They were going to get their chance to turn. It wasn't like there was a fucking shitload of traffic making it harder. They just wanted to get their thing done. They wanted to do what they wanted to do. It was all about them. So we're in an environment in society today. You see it all over the place. In the video, on the news, and on the internet, in the real world. Selfish fucks that don't give a shit about anything or anybody but themselves. That shooting that happened the other day in Kansas City for the couple kids wannabe gangbangers. Apparently, one with an automatic or a semi-automatic rifle, by the sounds of it, decides to hose a crowd. They didn't go there with this grand scheme to become terrorists and throw their life. Literally, in this case, these 2 boys are likely to spend the rest of their lives in prison, if not die. I don't know if Missouri has the death penalty. I'm not really care enough to look it up. But I guarantee you that sort of shit, they will spend a large chunk of their life in prison. For what? One person died, 22 people are hurt. 2 kids are going to prison. For what? Because these 2 kids got into a beef with some other kids, and it was their way or no way, and there's no negotiation, there's no empathy, there's no common sense here. We just whip it out. It's just hose them and hose everybody because we don't even know what the hell we're doing. We got enough firepower to kill 20 people or wound 20 people and kill somebody, but we don't really know what the hell we're doing with it, and had no business having it in the first damn place. But hey, that's a different video from a different day. As long as we save them, the unborn, from being, killed, in the doctor's office, they're free to die at each other's hands all they want. No? You tell me what you see. I know what I'm seeing. I'm hearing. I'm hearing it. I'm seeing it. Come on, right? So what do we do today? And this friendless issue. More and more of our social functions, people are becoming scared to go to big functions. I know of people that won't go out no more, or hardly ever go out no more. And then there's the economic side of things. The wife and I, we used to go out to dinner all on a regular basis. We hardly go out to dinner anymore. Can't afford to. Jesus, it costs you $20 just to go to fucking McDonald's. You want to go to Applebee's? You better be prepared to drop $100, $80 to $100. Couple of drinks, an appetizer, and 2 entrees, and you're $90. And that was 2 years ago, so God knows what it's gone up to now. And my wages don't keep up with that. We can't afford to go. So we don't go to and when I was younger, my cousins and my friends and I, there was always these bars, these nightclubs that we would go to in the late 80s and early 90s. And then I got remarried. I married my wife. We've been married since 1993. 92, 93, long time, and put up with each other's bullshit. And I'm going to do a different video called my take on the red pill. So y'all be seeing that, or you'll be ignoring it soon anyway. So it's not getting better, my friends. It's not getting better out there. It's getting worse. It's like the MAGA crowd. Some of them are so willfully ignorant. But a lot of them are institutionally ignorant. The reasons they're ignorant is, once again, it goes back to our youth. We're taught things as young men and women, and we're taught perceptions that are not always the truth, and we're taught things that are slanted by the people who taught us. So somebody who's a racist teaches their children about racism is likely to create a couple more. Their children are likely to be racists or racist minded. Now, I'm not saying they all turn out that way, but that's the realities of the world. And that doesn't matter the skin color. Because you know what? You don't think there are any racist black people? You fucking high. You fucking high. Because I know plenty of them who hate everybody, including their own people, white people, yellow people, everybody. But you know what? I'm in that category too. I get it. I don't like most people, in part, not because I individually don't like them or because I'm some, arrogant ass or some, I don't know. It's just that it's just simpler. It's simpler to not trust anybody and to distrust people that you don't know and to assume the worst out of everybody. Because that's the society we've devolved into. We are not evolving as a country. The country of America is devolving, and not in a good way. And it's going down some horrible paths. And Trump be damned. Trump gets reelected or not, it's not going to change nothing. The MAGA problem is still going to be there. And the individuals who support it, partly because of the way they were raised up, and in part, this is important, I think, the lack of social interaction, the lack of friendship, the lack of the interactions of family, large families, and other stuff takes its toll, and you find yourself more isolated. So you will gravitate toward people who will accept you or you feel comfortable around. And if they have some negative views on things, you tend to either ignore them, shrug and endure it, or agree with it. And the longer you're in that environment, the more likely you are to agree with it and to develop into it. Sometimes without even realizing you have. And it doesn't just have to be racism. It can be a whole slew of other problems that can play out that way. But in the bigger picture, why do so many MAGA people, why do the Trump fanatics go to his frickin' his events as often as they do? And I call them events because that's what these things are. It's entertainment events. Political bullshit aside, that man has not sat up there and gave out a political speech worth having, worth noting, or calling a political speech in 6 years, if ever. Trump isn't capable of it, and he won't read what his handlers write for him. So he goes off script all the time, and I gotta fully understand that because I'd be that guy too. You put a script in front of me and I'm going to ad-lib it at some point because I got things I want to say and speech be damned. There's the difference. So in their cases, they have hitched their wagon to this madness because they've been lost in their own little worlds for so long, and now there's like a bigger chance to reconnect. And you listen to some of these people, we come for the grandeur and for the excitement and so they're going to be, these people are attending his rallies to be entertained. Not because they really, politically supporting him, only because they're being entertained. Or they've convinced themselves somehow that this is the solution to all their problems in their world, including this problem. Yeah, so like I said, right after I got divorced from my ex-wife, there was a very brief window where I got into a very bad depression. And I've had a couple depressions in my life, and sometimes the things about depressions is they can be insidious in a lot of ways. You can get depressed. Everybody gets depressed. It's a depressing world. Just trying to do your normal routine on a regular basis can get to be depressing. But you can also get a deep depression that sets in and you don't know it's there. You don't recognize a lot of your problems for yourself are in because of this depressive state that you're in. And then you just magnify your problems. Some of these folks, like these young gentlemen down there, decided to go on a shooting spree over, I don't know, beef, face, mouth, stupidity. Does it matter? Does it matter? At the end of the day, does it matter? No. And let's not forget that, of all 50 odd states in America, Missouri is one of the, has the least, one among the handful with the least amount of gun control regulation at all. So these kids were legally capable walking around in the streets with those weapons, and nobody could say nothing to them. That's a problem. I mean, I'm just saying, no offense. You really want to live in a state, in a society where people can walk around with an AR-15 hanging off their back, or a shotgun cradling their arms all day? I mean, historically speaking, you don't have to go back too goddamn long to find that era. The old West is a good comparison to that, where everybody was damn near everybody, was armed because of everybody else was armed. That's where we're heading today, where everybody in the country's armed. Here's a thought. Here's a thought. Gun love in America. I got to ask you this: how many thousands of people were at that event when these kids went off on a tirade? How many thousands of people, of Missourians, were there? Gun loving, gun toting, all American, MAGA, and others. How many hundreds of guns were within, spitting distance of these kids? And what did we see? What did we see? All these brave, defiant gun holders. You'll take my gun out of my cold, dead hands people running like sheep, running like terrified cats for the frickin' border. Videos there, pictures there. Fun gunshot went off. It was all about self-preservation for 99.90% of these people, except for a handful of people. And my hat's off to those people. You took your life in your own hands to stop these kids from murdering more people, and potentially stopping them from murdering themselves too, because they might have done that. Although I don't think they were in that state at that point. The gentleman that tackled the one guy, kept him down, is the one I'm thinking of. But then you got that nurse who stood there while bullets are still, people are freaking out and running and screaming, and she's giving CPR to somebody trying to save a life. Well, her own mother and her own family are begging her to just run. Let's run. We got to run. And she's like, you go. I got to stay here. That lady deserves a reward. That lady deserves recognition. Those fellows who put their own lives on the line deserve recognition. Big recognition. Because that's empathy. That's empathy. Those people have showed empathy for everybody around them. Yeah, some of it might have been self-preservation too. I don't know how I would react in a situation. I've been in one situation where somebody pulled a gun on me and fired it. Luckily for both of us, he was a bad shot. Unluckily for him, I was 25 years old and angry. And I about beat him to death. It wasn't for the police coming through the front door and stopping me. I think I would have done that. I was not going to stop wailing on him because I didn't want him getting up again. I wasn't going to have him shoot me again. That was out of self-preservation and anger. Had nothing to do with doing the right thing or protecting the customers in the convenience store I was working at the time, or worrying about my job or the right thing. All I know is this kid come around with a little pistol, fired it off at my direction. First fired it off at an old lady in the back, and then fired, and she dropped below the counter, and ketchup hit the wall. Well, I didn't know it was ketchup, and neither did that kid. And when that kid turned around with his eyes bugged out like, oh crap, I killed the old lady, I'm going to kill you. That's all I thought in my head, is this fucker's going to shoot me next. This was back when we still had 16-ounce bottles of pop. I grabbed my half bottle of Pepsi, went over that counter, and just wailed on that kid. Damn near split his skull open. Look, lost my job over it. Didn't go to jail. But, so, yeah, I get it. And where are we going to go from there? How do we solve it? Meanwhile, these younger kids, these younger generations, we're fed a lot of bullshit. Now the newer generations are fed a whole slew of different bullshit, and there's no good or bad answers for any of it. There's just something. Answer somehow. We do anything, something. What? How do we fix this? How do you make it better? I don't have answers for that. If you expected this video to somehow be some help me kind of video, except for me venting my frustrations and my concerns and my fears and some of my damn soul, And if that's not what you wanted, that's not what you expected. Well, kick rocks. This isn't about you. Sometimes we got to remember it is about other people. The other side of that coin is sometimes we have to remember it is about us, and we need to focus on us first. We've spoon-fed and fire-hosed entire generations of this country this belief of the American dream, this belief of the nuclear family, this belief of this, that, and the other thing. And then at every opportunity put blocks and roadblocks and problems, both from economic and society issues, to prevent these things from being functional. Or we've dramatized these things so damn much that people fail to see what the hell really means. It's like that term woke. People throw this woke around like I don't know what they actually because in their heads they have no fucking clue what that means. They just think what they think it means and refer it to it because this is the battle cry that their group has decided is okay. So, once again, when you have a country, a whole lot of people that are suffering from various levels of depressions and economic depressions and society isolation, we are more connected now than ever in history of humanity. I don't know how many dozens of people will see this video over the next 25 years, but I do know one thing. This is immortality for myself. Because Google, these things are never going to go away. That's the thing. Once it's on the internet, it's there forever. And I take that verbatim. So perhaps that's not true. Eventually, they fade away or they get tapped out. But unlike photographs and video tapes and things like this doesn't degrade unless something catastrophic happens to the country or the world as a whole. Like Third World War, for example, would put an end to a lot of this crap. Set us back considerably, But that said, these videos are a form of immortality. This is how my voice will continue to sound down through the years, down through history, good, bad, and the ugly. And in some ways, this is probably the only grave marker I'll have. I'm just being honest there too. I don't have them. I can't afford to have life insurance right now, let alone have trying to pay for my burial crap right now. And every year it becomes more expensive. And then in addition to that, you have to have a grave site to be buried in because that's what everybody does, and on and on and on. I got money for any of that crap. And if you don't have money to pay for the cremation, the county or the state will do the cremation, and then your ashes sitting on a shelf somewhere because nobody comes and claims it. That's the other side of the lonely factor. The older I get, the worse this gets for me. It does. When I was young, I had lots of family. Lots of family. Not all of them good family. Not all of them worth being around. And a lot of times I didn't get to know all that many of them. But I had a lot of them. I had a huge family. An extended family. And I had a lot of friends. For me, I had a couple of really good friends. We shared interests. We shared passions. We shared a lot of time and joy and pain. And we went through a hell of a lot, and then life got in the way, and we got in the way of each other, and somehow or another, they're gone. And then since those years, I've met some, and I tend to call them associates. We all meet people that we associate with, but these people come and go in our lives. And some of them mean a lot more to me than I meant to them, because that's just how I feel. I mean, for years, I had a good friend that we did a lot together and under some pretty trying circumstances. But then life changed in some radical ways. He moved upstate, he got married, and he's 20 years younger than me. So, he's living his life. And after a while, I just stopped texting him because I had to text him to get a response. Well, if you don't text the other person, you don't email the other person once in a while, you don't write a letter to the other guy once in a while, they're not going to write you. I get that. It's a vicious damn cycle. It's a vicious circle. So as I've gotten older, my cousins and my aunts and uncles have all passed away or are in the process of passing away. Most of the rest of them have gone to the four winds, and I don't know where the hell they are. The occasional, Facebook thing posting by the scattered clan, but other than that, right? Now my wife and I've had 3 children in my life. Got 2 boys. Neither one of the boys have anything to do with me. That's my fault. My oldest son was through, some very bad situation with my ex-wife and I at the very end. And it took me 10 years or 8 years to even know he was around. And then by that time, he didn't want to do with me. And yeah, you can go through all the legal bullshit to force that. But I've also been around people who have had that forced upon them. I couldn't do that to my son. He doesn't want to be with me. That's his business. And eventually, my ex-wife remarried, and her new husband wanted to adopt him. And I think he was 10. Or yeah, he was 10 at that point. And I willingly signed over my custody rights to him because that was the right thing to do. It wasn't easy, but it was the right thing. It is what it is. My younger son, I don't know where the hell he's at. And once again, that's my fault. And in the years between my two marriages, I hooked up with a couple of gals because we're driven to do that. We're driven to have a relationship. We're driven to have that one person in our life, even though sometimes it's not necessarily beneficial. And in the long run, problematic. Once again, I'm going to do a different video on some of that. So I was in a very, very dark spot, 2002. I just graduated from college. Everybody's shutting me down. Nobody's going to hire me. The market was kind of dodgy at that point. I was already deep into a depression that had been going on for a number of years, and I just didn't know about it. And it just kept progressively getting worse. I stopped caring for myself. I got to where, people would, you need to shower or things like that. And it was just, I don't know. And he come to see me, and I didn't want to do with him. And he was about 10 years old when he came to see me, and I yelled down the stairs and said, I don't want to see that little shit. He's better off without me. And I didn't realize he was in the stairwell. My mom had let him come in the house, and he was coming up the stairs to meet me, and I said that. And I've never been able to fix that. How do you fix that? Boy went off, and then I didn't talk to him again for another 20 years, 15 years. He wrote me a letter once. It wasn't a very good letter, and he had every right to be angry, and I wrote him back, and he never wrote me back. And I've never pursued it after that. But that's the facts. Then that leaves my daughter. My wife and I, we have a daughter, and she's married and has kids. They live way down the south, and because of family issues, back about the same time, about 2003. Our family unit fell apart, and we had a lot of problems. And she ended up, when she turned 16, she moved away. She got out of the family. She ran away, more or less, and turned her back on us. And I probably deserved that too. My wife didn't. She didn't deserve any of that crap. So like I said, we all make our bad choices and bad decisions. Then we have to figure out we have to wise up to that. Some of us do, and some of us don't. Some of us go through our whole lives and never see it. And then I got people that, my cousin Robbie, up until he passed away, he had 11 kids. He paid child support. He was bled dry from child support most of his damn life. He lived wherever he could crash, mostly in beat up old campers in people's backyards, that kind of crap. And but he had a much more, richer life than I did at the end. He had more people in it, more people hung around. His kids came to see him and shit. And I don't understand the differences and the whys and wherefores, and I never will. And that's also part of life, right? So, we're old and we have problems. How the hell do we tell these young people? What kind of good advice can you give somebody that's 20 today? Advice that they'll actually take to heart, or advice that they won't outright dismiss because they're 20 and the world's crazy. I don't know that there are answers to it. I do know that we need to have those discussions. We need to talk about this stuff. It needs to happen, which is also something us older gentlemen were taught not to do. We were taught not to discuss a lot of things. And it's also our thought process. This is in part our thought process. This is for you ladies. Men think the way men do, in part because we are taught and raised by men in a man's environment that was established by men a long time ago that we had no control over or any say over whatsoever. So you take that with whatever you want to take it with. And it all has its ups and downs. So we're not conditioned to be emotionally vulnerable. It's a bad thing. It's terrible. It's something that you should, fight against. You know, it's just like that. Work yourself till you die. Let's just be the old man that works themselves literally to fucking death, because that's what we want to do. We want this guy here. We want to be this guy when we're 70 and 80 years old, assuming we live to be 70. And there's a lot in our society who are pushing for this. You have to ask yourself, who really benefits from this? Who benefits from the old people not having a secure old age? Who benefits from making these old people go back to work? Who benefits? Who benefits when our society is emotionally crushed? Who's benefiting from this? Who's pushing all this crap? Who's feeding off of it? Because there's always feeders. There's always bloodsuckers who suck off anybody and everybody, because that's how they figured out how to get theirs. Is it wrong? Yeah. I blame them for, I can't blame them for doing it. I just know it's a wrong thing. A lot of things in the world get done that are wrong, but you can't really blame the people for doing it. And if you do, you're a hypocrite. It's a hypocrisy, the height of hypocrisy, right? It's just, like I said over and over again, you see it in society today. We're taught as men to behave certain ways, and then we're having generations now that they're trying to deprogram. They're trying to change that thought process, and hopefully for the better. But is it? Or is it just that transitional period that's going to take a long time, several generations to get through it before we actually see some significant changes? And how many people have to suffer and die from it? I don't know. I'm 57. I'll be 58 in September, and I've got about 9 good years of work ahead of me before I can take the full Social Security that I'm entitled to, because I fucking paid for it. You fucking assholes that tell me I'm not entitled to it, go fuck yourselves and die. Does that make me a liberal, woke fucking liberal? Just asking you, America. Just asking. Where do we go? How do we fix it? How do we help them be better men and better people? Society demands change of everybody over time, good and bad, which is part of evolution. It's also part of de-evolution too. When is it okay for a 15-year-old or a 17-year-old to walk around with an automatic weapon of any sort in public, let alone at a massive football event like that? Where's the kid's parents? Now, just recently, in a different case where this young fellow went to school and shot up a bunch of people, they're prosecuting his parents. They got him the gun. Did they know he was going to go on a shooting tear? Of course not. But they're still prosecuting. They're trying to put his mom in prison because of him. Is that right? Maybe it is. Maybe it is.